Hi, you guys. So today we're going to be talking about the 5 common types of cognitive bias. And if you've been doing this module in order, you know that we've been focusing on bias a lot, but more the written types of bias dealing with news articles and more informational texts. Now we're kind of shifting gears into this idea of cognitive bias, where you're receiving information every day. And when you receive that information, you're applying your own personal bias to it. And this can happen long term and short term, right? Some long term factors that influence our cognitive bias would be maybe how you were raised and your values and your culture. The list goes on. And then some more short term things could be, what are you feeling at the time? Are you angry? Are you sad? Who are you around? Are you getting pressured by your peers to kind of perceive something in a certain way? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. The first type of our common biases, is anchoring bias, where you're relying too heavily on the first piece of information that you come across. So take this example. We have 2 black sweatshirts that look pretty much the same, but one of them is $300 while the other is $35. Naturally, you're going to think, oh my gosh, this $35 sweatshirt is so much cheaper because you're comparing it to the first $300 sweatshirt. This happens a lot in stores. Think you're in the mall and you're going to a clothing store and you walk in and you're surrounded by shirts and pants all at full price. And then think about where everything that's maybe discounted or on sale is in the back of the store. So you're walking, you see all these full-priced items that are kind of pricey, but now look, you're surrounded by stuff that's significantly cheaper because it's on sale. Once again, your brain is perceiving all of these expensive items and comparing it to the cheaper items, influencing you to buy the cheaper goods. Another huge thing that happens in stores is sales. You're at Walmart, you're at Target, and you see this huge, originally $50, but now it's on sale for $35. And chances are it probably wasn't even originally $50. They're just kind of tricking your brain once again into thinking that this item is so much cheaper. And usually they take it even another step further, where you can see here where the original price is big and it's in bold letters, and now the sale price is smaller. It's in this nice green font to kind of stimulate your brain into thinking, oh my gosh, that's such a good deal, it's in green. These are just small marketing tricks that happen in every store. Another thing that happens a lot in today's society is this idea of blind spot bias, where you can recognize bias in others, but you fail to recognize it yourself. I have a few examples. It's sad. Your views are so selective. Why can't others be like me, objective? And this other kind of thought process where you think you're right. I'm right. I know I'm right. I'm really sure I'm right. Well, I'm pretty sure anyway. These biases are influenced by your culture and your other opinions that you have, and you need to think to yourself, what data am I missing that's kind of forcing this bias? A real world example here is something I think we're all guilty of. Denfeld versus East. Some biases toward Denfeld could be that they're the working class and they're bad at hockey and they misbehave, whereas Denfeld thinks about East, they're cake eaters and they're all rich and they only care about hockey. These are just a couple biases where we can see the fault in each other, right? We see the faults of Denfeld and East, but we can't look upon ourselves and recognize our own faults. But we're so quick to say what the faults of the other school is. Confirmation bias is up next. And this is something I think we're seeing a lot on social media and things these days, where you listen and trust the first and only information that confirms your beliefs. My two examples here are both pertaining to gun control. And my first example is pro-gun control, and my second is anti. The first example says, more than 36,000 Americans were victims of firearm-related deaths in 2015, and I have this citation here. And the next source says, the National Rifle Association reported in 2013, studies indicate that firearms are used over 2 million times a year for personal protection, and that the presence of a firearm, without a shot being fired, prevents crime in many instances. So as we can see, we are talking about the same issue, but different points of view on said issue. If you were pro-gun control, you find this first article and you post it on your social media and you say, this is exactly what I'm talking about. But you're forgetting to take a look at this other point of view that is also valid and it has data and facts to back it up. However, that's not confirming your belief. So, it doesn't matter. That's not what I'm talking about, right? Both sides of every argument always has this kind of issue, which is why sometimes in persuasive writing, we ask you to look at both sides of your argument so you can better form your own argument. Another thing I think we are all guilty of is this idea of negativity bias, where you're focusing on negative events at the expense of positive or neutral events. We have some examples here. We have a man who has in the past been bitten by a dog. So now he doesn't like any dogs, even if they might be friendly, because he has this past negative event that he can only focus on. Same here in the back, where we have a boy who doesn't want to go down the slide because once he was hurt going down the slide. So now all slides are kind of off limits for him. Basically, our brains have this tendency to just obsess over the bad things that happen, where, as you can see in this example, maybe a bunch of good things happened in a day, but you're constantly worrying and thinking about this bad thing. How many times have you been laying in bed and you're about to fall asleep and then bam, suddenly you remember that super awkward thing you did today or maybe even in a couple years ago? That is your brain just always focusing on these bad events in your life. And there's really just nothing we can do about that. Some more examples of negativity bias like in your life is the news. Your brain is naturally drawn to like reading and hearing and learning about bad things. Let's look at these examples. So this first article, Tiger Woods injured in car crash, rescued with jaws of life and taken to hospital. Whereas a more neutral article title could be Tiger Woods rescued. They're giving you the same information, however, one looks significantly more interesting to you than the other. Where Tiger Woods was injured and he was in a car crash, but he was rescued with the jaws of life. That is naturally grabbing your brain's attention. Next up is the senator uses hearing to push ridiculous conspiracy theory. When you read this title, you're just convinced about this ridiculous conspiracy theory and you want to learn all about it. Who cares what happened at the rest of the hearing? You just want to know what this alleged ridiculous conspiracy is. And then finally, we have a looming disaster. New data reveals where flood damage is an existential threat, whereas a more neutral title, data reveals where flood damage could be a threat. Once again, your brain is wired to naturally be drawn toward the looming disaster and the existential threat. We want to get this interesting, normally upsetting information. And that is something that news articles will always do, is they will give the most interesting title with the most shock value that they can to get you to read the article. The last bias we're going to talk about today is this idea of outcome bias, where you're judging or evaluating a decision based solely on its outcome. Some of you might be able to relate to this idea where you studied and you worked so hard for a whole week for a test or an exam or a quiz, and you still didn't do well, maybe even failed. And you think to yourself, I'm never studying for a test again. I spent this whole week studying, and oh, maybe there was something wrong with my teacher or my lessons because I wasn't prepared for this. Yes, this is the idea of outcome bias, where you're completely ignoring everything that you did to prepare for that test and instead are only focusing on the bad grade. You need to take a step back and reevaluate. Okay, maybe I didn't do the right studying for my brain. Like maybe, I need to take a new approach to studying for next time. Or maybe I need to ask for some more help. This is what you can do to kind of get away from this outcome bias. And that's all I have for you guys today. This upcoming assignment you guys are going to be doing is looking more at your own personal biases when it comes to some real world issues. So we wanted you to have this tool so you can kind of check yourself in your life to notice when you are experiencing these biases and have the tools to kind of deal with them. Thank you so much, you guys.